Even chiefs get it wrong. So I'm going to need to start this one with the confession because for too long, junior sailors think, well, some think the mess never makes mistakes. Or worse, that we don't own them. So let me set the record straight. We get it wrong too. And today, I want to talk about one of those times when I did.
This isn't just a podcast. It's a movement. Real stories. Zero fluff. Battle-tested wisdom. Straight from the mess to the dead plates. If you're tired of silence, the politicking, and leadership cliches, you're in the right place. Welcome to CultureKeeper.
So, welcome to CultureKeeper, the podcast that bridges the gap between junior sailors and senior leaders. I'm Jessica Hardemon. Today, I want to open the door and show you the part of leadership that doesn't make the eval bullets, the part where humility saves culture. So let me take you back to when I was an E5. I had a sailor who tested my patience, and the assumption I made about them almost ruined their reputation before it even had a chance to grow. So as in an E5, OS2, I'm out there in the leadership streets, working daily with sailors with haze grade underway, standing lots of watch, eating lots of snacks. I mean, we had this sailor that lived in a berthing with us, and it got a bit dicey. And what I mean with that is this sailor was raised a little bit different in that they would shower and this wet towel, like they would put inside their rack so that the towel would obviously not fully dry. So it would begin to stink. It would, kind of get mildewy. And that was like normal for them. And they would take that stinky towel and then they would go shower and put that sticky towel on their clean body. And it was just this cycle. So the aisles started to have a smell. The other piece, like they were notorious for walking around with no shoes on, like through the berthing, but then also like in the head area and back. And then like they would do all of that, then climb back into their racks. It was a very unsanitary area. In the berthings, your rack is not just isolated to you. Depending on the setup, you have six other people or five other people, right? Because it's three on either side. You have five other people that are affected by your sanitation or unsanitation. And so it created an environment where the roommates weren't very happy. It was bad. The assumption was that she was nasty, that she didn't care about herself or about us living in this burden around her that could potentially get sick. And I struggle with that because I don't like to be a judgy person because you never know what a person's going through. But I'm tired of smelling this, right? So I like teetered on both sides and it wasn't fair, but that's where I was at the time. And I have to own that. But the more I leaned in, the more I realized it wasn't nastiness. It was a lack of tools. And that realization hit me harder than the smell ever did. Now, you would think something so small wouldn't have an impact on a division, but it kind of did. There were conversations that were in the burden that made their way into CIC. And if in CIC it goes down outside of, the tracking of things, you got the snacks, you got the gossip, you got all the things that happen in CIC. And that was one of the topics of discussion. I can only imagine like being a sailor and maybe I'm having some struggles with this stuff and I just think it's normal. But then I hear the chatter over at the chart table or over at a console and I know that they're talking about me. I never even considered that. Neither did the other sailors. We just were feeling the way that we did. And then you have the sailors that, of course, were talking about her behind her back. That wasn't right. But something that I did end up realizing was that it wasn't just about hygiene. It was about credibility and culture. And I say that because when you have people that now have this view of this watchstander, maybe they're looking at this watchstander as though she's incompetent. And then what culture is it that we're creating within the division if we're normalizing talking bad about another person? completely wrong. Now, one of the things that I forced myself to do, because again, I told you, I didn't, it didn't sit right with me to any of these skills, because her mom and her grandmother had done everything for her, whether it was making beds up, washing clothes, like doing all of the things, all of the life skills that a person would think, hey, maybe you learned this when you were a teenager because you had chores or something like that. That wasn't her story. So here she is in a world having to adult, but she's not equipped with those tools. And so immediately my mind and my actions, it shifts from wanting to judge to wanting to mentor. And yes, it started off as forcing in terms of like, I've really got to understand. So I'm going to have these conversations. But I also began to enjoy the conversations because I was learning something about someone new. And because we had built that rapport, when I would suggest different things to her, she was more apt to receive it because it wasn't coming from a place of judgment. It was coming from a place of genuinely wanting to help. So with that, right? My first class stepped up as well. Between us, we showed this individual how to wash clothes, how to fold clothes, like just the more sanitary ways to go about doing things because we learned that she really just didn't know. Now, the outcome, no more smells. And instead of bare feet running amok and tracking whatever the things, they were flip flops instead. Uh, Internally, though, for her, there was an improvement in how she saw herself, how she felt about herself, her self respect. And there was a vast improvement in how that relationship with others, right? How the birthing mates treated her, how that elevated itself within CIC. Because we had to own the fact that we goofed that one up. And that wasn't the last time I got it wrong. Fast forward a couple of years, I had another sailor who kept just messing up with tasks like over and over. And just like before, my first assumption missed the truth completely. So I had a sailor that would always like, they just failed at getting the task done. Like it was mind blowing because in our minds, we get the work list or we get the task and it is pretty simple because we're junior enough to where we don't think it's anything too complicated. But the sailor would consistently make mistakes, consistently goof it up, would get in trouble for different things. So the counseling chits were piling up, and you had leadership, kind of assuming like they were gaming the system. And so with this pattern, frustration is building. You have leadership, whether it be like your LPO, whether it's the work center soup, or even some of us who are just kind of in charge of leading a particular task. We're like, man, what we doing? Like this dude is useless. Like, what's the point of taxing when you pretty much doing it yourself? So there's really no point in assigning this person anything. And the assumption was that this individual was lazy or they didn't care. And it created a lot of frustration because you had some sailors feeling like they had to pull double duty when you had an able body right here who just wasn't pulling their weight. So things started coming to a breaking point. You have sailors.
Culture isn't just kept, it's shaped. Every sailor, every day. Keep the culture. Lead on.